Dear customer, welcome at the Worx, our International Customer Summit. We wish we could have invited you all live at a nice location, but we all know that this isn't possible today. Luckily, there are, of course, virtual alternatives, so here we are. Very nice that you are joining. We have quite a full agenda today, and we will talk about the evolving HR and payroll landscape in Europe. We will discuss the power of centralized core HR data management, the increasing demand for improved employee experience, and the importance of harnessing future skills on today's talent. Before we kick off, let's give some practical information. This summit will take about 2 hours. There will be an intermission, a short break in the middle, so that you can grab that fresh cup of coffee or tea. To make this digital webinar a bit more interactive, we have some polls. You will be able to vote. You can simply do that by clicking on your screen on the buttons. Should you have any technical issues, you can use the chat box that you can see on your screen to inform us. So, we have two guests now in this studio. That's Michael Kusters, our CMO, and of course, Kobe Verdonk, CEO of SD Worx.
Thank you.
Kobe, the word is to you.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for joining this our first real Worx event. I would just go on and take a couple of minutes is really to explain this, the why SD Worx is, because I think we really have a very strong pledge to the market, but also to you as a customer. And that is we spark success at the heart of your business, so you and your people can thrive. And that is our purpose. And just maybe I want to take 1 or 2 minutes is to take the time is to explain what that really means for us. So we are a very strong organization with really one goal, and is really to make you better. It's really you as a customer, that you can operate day in, day out, that you can do a better job, but it's also that your business will be more successful. That is really what we want to do, and that's where we go in with all our employees, with all our partners. That's what we want to go for. And how do we do that is because we are the heart of your business. We work with your employees, which is the number one asset, of course, of every company that we're having. But it's also we are the heart of the businesses, or the processes and so on. We need to be correct. So it's all about this. Is also one side it's the people side, but it's also we need to be day in, day out. What we're doing is we need to make sure is that we are standing there, that we are there really correct. And more than that we want to make sure that the engagement at your employees is going upwards. And that is really where we are going more and more, and that you will see in the presentations and the discussions that we're going to have forward, that's the focus area that we have more and more, is making sure is that the employee, day in, day out, is really feeling is that you are there as an employer, and we are there to help you to make sure that this is going to happen. It's really to make that interaction a lot stronger. And how do we do this? It's by being a lot more than some of you think we are. We are not just a payroll provider. We are a lot more than that. We are a real HR company that we are today. We are focusing on the entire employee life cycle. And we do that in all the different processes that we are going to. So it's really starting from recruiting people up to, of course, it's all the administration, the HR core, where all the normal transactions are going in there. And then it goes into the payroll, of course. The reward side is making sure is that you can reward your people very well, but it's also giving flexibility, all sort of options that you can structure that the best way for your employees, but also from a financial perspective. We are very, very strong in workforce management. All the tooling around is really tracking and planning of your staff that you can do with us. And then, of course, it's also the talent side. It's really making sure is that people can feel is that we evolve, because all of you know is that lifetime of a full life work is something that is gone. It's people really want to go is for experiences, and we need to make sure is that people feel is that they learn out of what they're doing today but is also preparing themselves is for the next experience that needs to be done there. So that's where we are focusing on this full entire really employee life cycle. How do we do that? Is mainly investing into digital. It's really making sure is that we have digital options that we are having, is making sure is that, that we have the best solutions and that they are integrated. That's what we work on. Secondly is of course, it's the digital side is one thing, but you also need somebody there is still administrative processes behind it and so on. We are there with business process outsourcing is really to make sure is that we can as well, and with managed payroll services, that we are there as well to deliver these services. And then also to be there at the moments of truth. It's at a certain moment, you will have questions. You want to have really somebody you can ask these questions to help you in a certain moment of the company, but there's also when there is a big question towards your workforce, how to organize this. And there we have the right people, the consultancy skills is really to make that happen. And then of course, data. Data, we are sitting on an enormous number of data. That data can help you. That can help you is to really make business decisions the right way. Is to give you the insights, but is also give you some benchmarks, and there's really some statistics that you can make really the right decisions on. So that is how we want to do that. Who are we as a company? Who is SD Worx? We are going very fast. We are a company that has been growing over the last 75 years. So we have a 75 years lifespan. It's our anniversary year, a very strange year, to be honest. We wanted to do that with our customers and with our people, but it's our anniversary year of 75 years. And we are really proud of that. And we want to be for a long time still there and being a real partner for you. And we do that with our over 4,000 employees, which are all specialists. We are really focused on the HR side that we are. We have about 70,000 customers. And of course, we have about 4 million of your employees that we are working for day in, day out. And we do that by, of course, we have a revenue, but it's mostly is what we are. We are an independent company and we own ourselves. So we don't really have a big shareholder next to it. Is that really the profit that we are making is all reinvested in the company. So that makes one side is that we really can stay independent and being really this European leading HR company that we want to be. But also is that we can invest in our solutions, making sure is that we can service you day in, day out better, that we can bring you the new insights around HR and to help you to become really a sparking company and making sure is that your employees become day in, day out a lot stronger. So that's who we are. We are a European company focusing on Europe, but of course we have also a global network, so we have a full reach. We are delivering services in 108 countries, and we do that day in, day out for you. So that's in a nutshell who we are. We're very proud to have you as a customer, and we really want to make sure is that every day in, day out, we are there for you, but it's also that we can help you is to become that company that really everybody wants to work for. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Kobe, for this nice introduction. Also standing next to me is Michael Kusters. That's our CMO, Chief Marketing Officer. Michael will talk about employee experience. Hello, Michael. Welcome in the studio. How are you feeling?
I'm doing well.
Yeah.
Thank you. I have a question for you, Peter.
Oh, yeah.
Are you familiar with the origins of the name The Worx?
No.
Well, the reason why we came up with the name is a very simple one, because in the US, if you order a hot dog, you order The Worx, you basically get everything on top. And that was the purpose of today, to share with our clients what we have on our hot dog, so to speak. So that's really what we wanted to share. So
okay.
A little clarification for that mysterious name, The Worx, some of you might not be familiar with.
Okay, and that ties in with what Kobe just told about the offering. So it's actually the full employee lifecycle offering
Exactly.
we can offer to our customers. Okay, let's talk about employee experience.
Yes, employee experience, very much top of mind with clients, with employees today. But before we dive into the topic, Peter, I just wanted to do a little thought experiment. So suppose that COVID-19 had struck 25 years ago, 1995. What did we have in terms of technology? Think about laptops and mobile computing. Bill Gates pretty much was the only man on the planet who owned a mobile computer. Today, every office worker really has a laptop. So, you know, that's a tool that we can use to overcome the inconvenience of COVID. In 1995, we used to sit in cubicles. We used to drive to the office every day. And today we just, we exchange the cubicle for the couch. Mm-hmm. And you see people working from home all the time. We also used to have these dial-up connections. You remember what that sounded like? Mm-hmm. That was the sound of a modem, right? And you actually had not ubiquitous internet. You had broadband connection. Today you have broadband connections. Back in the day, it was a complex thing to dial into the internet. Today we have mobile phones. Remember that we used to have these big bricks with an antenna coming out of it, which then broke off, and you had to buy a new expensive phone, floppy disks. Now we have cloud computing. Messenger already existed back in 1995. We actually investigated it. Today you have dozens of messaging applications to choose from, whether it's for professional work or for private usage. My kids spend half of their days on these messaging apps today. So you see how incredibly connected we are and how technology, and you see that on the next slide, has really come such a long way. And you can argue COVID is obviously, it's devastating. It's very bad. There's industries which are terribly hit by the pandemic. But on the flip side, and this is the naive optimist in me, we also today have a set of tools which allow us to overcome some of the inconvenience. Hopefully we can leave this pandemic behind us very quickly, but at least we have technologies to adapt ourselves to these circumstances. Mm-hmm. Now, what have we done over the last year, or over the last couple of months, I should say? We've done a piece of research with 3,000 HR leaders across Europe in order to really understand what some of the lasting effects would be of COVID on HR decision makers and on HR decisions and technology. And so what we saw are 8 main conclusions. The first one is that COVID will have a lasting impact, and we believe that the impact of COVID will be felt for the years to come. Secondly, we saw that HR leaders really focused on fixing the basics, and they really went back to their business and said, we want to ensure operational continuity. Payroll needs to run. We need to capture the data. We need to ensure legal compliance with all these legal changes which are coming our way. So there was a tidal wave of legal changes still today that people needed to digest, to the detriment, unfortunately, of a number of other initiatives. So you see that initiatives around diversity and inclusion and maybe some talent initiatives have been put on the back burner to the expense of continued operational efficiency. In terms of digital, the picture we saw from the survey was very double. On the one hand, there's a strong desire to move into digital, and you see the desire to accelerate digital initiatives. On the flip side, you see that companies actually rate themselves fairly low on the digital maturity scale. So people consider themselves rather low in terms of digital. So that creates a huge opportunity for HR leaders to think about how can we shape the future of digital. One vantage point to look at that is through the eyes of employee experience. And this is the point where employee experience comes up. Mm-hmm. For many companies dealing with COVID, the employee experience is a set of digital touch points. It's a set of, the way we are interacting today with you is a digital way. And very many companies are actually dealing with their employees through these channels. So that focus, that ability to deal with digital channels is becoming very, very important. And finally, for the years to come, so one of the, or two of the projects put on the back burner are projects around flexible reward and about flexible workforce management. Mm-hmm. People realize that in times of uncertainty, you need to be able to deal with that uncertainty. You have to almost embrace it rather than run away from it. So therefore, tooling and processes and thinking and policies around flexible reward and flexible workforce management will be very big on the radar in 2021 and the years to follow. And then finally, we dubbed our research, and some of you may have seen this already coming through some of the SD Worx channels. We dubbed our research Fluid as Hula Hoop Shaking. Mm-hmm. Why the metaphor of the hula hoop? If, like me, many of you grew up in the 80s or in the 90s while hula hoop shaking was a thing, you know that in order to shake that hula hoop, you have to be very stable on your feet. You need to be grounded with your feet. But you also need to have this fluid motion, and you have to adapt to the circumstances to keep the hula hoop spinning. So that's this idea, which also respondees in interviews in the survey actually said, this is the sort of the attitude and the position we need to take. We need to have our basics right. We need to have our policies, our technology, our processes, our people need to be firmly established. But when we do that, we also need to be able to flex and to adapt to the circumstances. Let's dig in a little deeper into the research. And we'll continue to use this research outcome as a red thread throughout today's The Worx Summit. At the top of the outcomes, you see payroll. That highlights that need for operational continuity. And a couple of other things highlighting that. Control over wage cost, operational efficiency. But then there's 5 or 6 different elements which surfaced in the research, which all are part of employee experience. Well-being, learning, work-life balance, HR services deployed to employees. All of these items are basically touch points to grow and to educate people, to make them stronger in their roles as employees. And so that idea of employee centricity, while you can argue it's somewhere middle of the pack, it's actually much bigger than what you see in the survey. It's a whole set of points which come out there. So that bubble of employee experience is increasingly important to HR leaders. So let's dig into the next slide. What does the employee experience really look like? I think the simplest way to look at employee experience is as a set of digital touch points. Consider about how people enter the company, how they get onboarded, how they do their daily jobs. They get in touch, quite literally, with HR and with the rest of the company. And these touch points, the more they become digital, the more they need to become frictionless. And the idea about digital is really to take all the friction, all the inconvenience, all the paperwork in a number of cases out of the equation. And you see that if you start to map out an employee journey, how an employee enters into the company, and then you track that employee throughout their careers, you see that that number of touch points really increases, and the opportunity to digitalize all these touch points is just humongous. It's not just an intranet or sending an email. No, you have a host of processes that all can be digitalized. And there's a huge opportunity for HR leaders to work on that, not just this year or next year, but for the years to come. So, how digitally mature are we? As a matter of fact, today the respondents to the survey rated themselves as rather low, and we'll dig into a poll a little later on. Mm-hmm. But I think that's another key conclusion of our research that we need to take on board. On the one hand, there's this strong desire to optimize the employee experience. On the other hand, there's this rather low maturity, and I think that is a conundrum we'll have to collectively solve together with clients and within the HR technology industry. Okay, I think we're getting to the end of my intervention here. How can we then improve the digital experience with employees? Well, I think it's on the first level, it's not a matter of pure technology. It's a matter of flipping the thinking. It's about no longer thinking about isolated processes, but about connected, integrated processes. It's no longer about being intrusive and invading your life, but making connections in a very simple way. Approving an absence request with a click of a button on a smartphone, not while navigating 5 levels down in a complex application. That's the sort of thinking we need. Dependency of employees and managers needs to be switched in empowerment. Time consumption needs to be switched to productivity thinking. Disengaging needs to be about inspiration. How can I bring the right idea or spark the right idea at the right moment? And then finally, it needs not to be exclusive with a certain set of technologies only available to a small group of people, but it needs to be personal and ubiquitous. Technology needs to be sitting in the hands of every employee, not just a select few. And that's also what we were trying to do with the SD Worx Assistant and some of the tooling that actually our clients are adopting very, very quickly. For instance, we've seen a 10-fold increase of the use of our digital application, our digital assistant, over the last 6 months. So you see that the industry is not only moving, but all SD Worx clients are very rapidly adopting these digital HR means.
Okay, so as you already mentioned, indeed, in the survey, about, I think, 3,000 people, employers answered that survey, and the maturity of digitalization was rather low.
Yeah.
I'm very curious to know, what's the situation of the audience watching this customer summit. So maybe it's time for the first poll.
It's time for the first poll.
Okay, good. So this is the question for you. How digital are the employee touchpoints in your organization today? If you think that there is a lot of room for improvement, you choose very low. If you are convinced that your company is a pioneer when it comes to digitalization, then you can, of course, choose very high as your answer. There are 5 possible answers, so 5 different levels of digitalization, and we will soon see the results coming in. Maybe, Michael, let me ask you, to what extent are you personally interested in digitization, in apps, technology?
Very much, but I'm also very critical of some applications. So just on an anecdotal level, every couple of weeks or every couple of months, I weed out some of the new apps that I've downloaded, and the ones that I don't use or that don't bring me any value, I kick off of my phone. So I use the phone, obviously as many of you, very often, but those apps need to deserve their place. So, and I think actually very many people are like that. There's an incredible amount of data and information and apps available, but it's only those apps that you use frequently and you go back to on a regular basis that deserve a spot almost on the phone. So I'm a pretty critical guy when it comes to innovative apps.
Yeah. Okay. So meanwhile, we can see the first results. It's a bit difficult for me to read, honestly.
Yeah, you see that the high scores are only not even a majority, right? So very high and high, we don't get to maybe we get to a third of the votes, I think, if we get there. Very low and low, also less than that. But I think most people are somewhere middle of the pack, and I think that's not really a surprise. I think many people have sort of stepped into digital HR. They've had their first experiences, maybe they have a set of talent management processes, maybe a couple of other tools. But what I read in it, and this is now a bit of a fast conclusion, but you see that many companies have set their first baby steps into digital HR, and I think that clarifies a little bit of the response here. But many see still an opportunity and a way to go to really digital end-to-end processes, where you accompany an employee through their life cycle through a set of digital touchpoints.
Okay, still some work to do. Right, you already mentioned the Worx digital assistant. What I would suggest is that we watch now a video testimonial. One of our customers, that's SKF, talks about that digital assistant. Let's have a look.
Wij zijn een deel van de SKF-groep. Wij zijn het Europees distributiecentrum van de groep. Wij verdelen hun producten binnen Europa, Midden-Oosten en Afrika. En wij zorgen voornamelijk voor de verdeling van de naverkoop. Wij zijn bij SD terechtgekomen omdat we een uitdaging hebben. Wij willen eigenlijk voornamelijk open en transparant communiceren met onze medewerkers, want onze kracht, dat zijn eigenlijk onze mensen. Binnen ons Employee Care programma hechten wij ook heel veel waarde aan de juiste processen en de tools te geven aan onze mensen, zodat ze zich ten volle kunnen ontwikkelen, zowel op professioneel als op privégebied. Dus binnen onze communicatiestructuur hadden we eigenlijk 1 tool die er niet was. Dat is eigenlijk een tool die op een snelle en efficiënte manier al onze medewerkers met 1 druk op de knop kan informeren. De implementatie ging eigenlijk vrij vlot. Wij kregen alle tools, nieuwsbrieven, marketingmateriaal, posters, flyers ter beschikking. We konden het ook zelf aanpassen indien nodig. En de tool is eigenlijk makkelijk te gebruiken. Installatie loopt eigenlijk ook perfect via de bestaande platformen. Maar de mensen beslissen zelf of zij de app installeren. Dus het vraagt wel wat tijd om die gewoonte erin te steken. Met de Digital Assistant kan je eigenlijk sneller je verlofdagen aanvragen. Je kan ook heel makkelijk je out-of-office aan en uitzetten. Loonsadministratie makkelijker bekijken en opvolgen. En je hebt het ook altijd bij de hand, want het is gewoon een app op je telefoon. Er is ook een handige chatbot-functie waarmee je gewoon vragen kan stellen aan de HR-medewerker om je te helpen met ouderschapsverlof, allerlei dingen die je wil weten binnen HR. Dus dat is gewoon dichter bij de klant. Momenteel hebben we 166 gebruikers en daar komen er nog elke dag tot elke week bij. We hebben een hele leuke samenwerking met SD. We zitten momenteel volop in testfase. Dus dat wil zeggen dat we heel regelmatig met elkaar in contact gaan. Voornamelijk is dat via een standaard mailtje. En uit die mail blijkt dan ook dat zij perfect willen weten wat er juist misloopt, wanneer dat juist misloopt, om echt een tool te kunnen afleveren die perfect werkt voor de gebruiker. Dus dat is echt een pluspunt.
So let's dive into the next chapter now, payroll and reward. I've moved 2 seats to be able to properly welcome 2 colleagues here in the studio. Welcome Els and welcome Eugenie. Els, can you start and tell our customers what's your function within SD Worx?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Els Hanses, function International Sales Director at SD Worx.
Okay, thank you. And Eugenie, can you elaborate a bit more on your role within Point Logic HR?
Of course, I'm Managing Director of Belgium.
Yes.
For Point Logic.
Okay, and Point Logic HR is the company that became part of SD Worx earlier this year. Right, Michael already talked about a survey we set up earlier this year, and one of the learnings there is that employers give highest priority and importance to payroll. Isn't it, Els?
Yeah, exactly. So if all goes well, technically speaking, we see on the slide a graph showing the challenges HR decision makers and companies face. And indeed, as you rightly say, Peter, payroll is by far the most important challenge and priority or important subject. So this learns us that getting the basics right is still an important subject and a burning subject. And we can also conclude that with COVID-19, this even has enforced that priority. So a lot of attention goes to that. What we can also conclude is that it takes a lot of time away. So the fact that all attention, all the time goes to payroll, it takes a lot of time away from the other items that we see ranked as well on the graph. Mm-hmm. Which works a little bit in contradiction also with things that companies would like to emphasize also, like the more soft HR items that are listed as well on the graph. Companies that are looking at payroll but cross-border as well. Also for those companies, this adds another layer of complexity, really getting everything organized. Surprisingly, what you also see is that digital transformation and the HR process automation is scoring quite low, which I personally find very strange, because those are the things that help you as a company to really work on that efficiency from a payroll perspective. So that contradiction is a surprising element that pops up in the
payroll is very time consuming, but actually companies are not really using the tools and the technology, the automation that's already there actually to help them.
That's what we can conclude, that this extra step definitely could be made, and certainly also from an attention perspective, and so putting importance.
Okay, good. How can we help as a company our customers? Have you any figures about outsourcing
Yeah, so that's a good question, because if we look at the top 5 that we see on the graph on the challenges, on the HR challenges, and we plot that against the top 5 topics that are outsourced, it doesn't really match. So there is quite a difference. First of all, outsourcing is also something that differs from country to country, so it has a different type of importance. So you have countries like Poland, Italy. Those countries you see hardly the culture of outsourcing, and certainly when it comes to payroll. And then you have countries where payroll is a little bit more outsourced. Countries like Belgium, the Netherlands, their payroll is number 3 in the ranking, while from an overall perspective, it only has the 8th place on the ranking. So, so that's quite weird. Certainly, weird is maybe not the right word, but it's again a surprising finding looking again at the graph of the challenges.
Yeah. So you see some difference geographically. I don't know if there is a correlation between the size of the company and outsourcing.
Yeah. Yes and no. My response would be, Peter. There is at a certain level, there is definitely an impact, whether the size of the company is rather large or small, but not for all the topics. For payroll, for instance, it has hardly an impact, but other topics like HR statistics or well-being, that kind of more soft, again, subjects do have more, are more outsourced, I would say, than the really hard side of HR and payroll.
Okay, so that's for it, for payroll, your first view on these figures?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, then indeed. We can, I think, move to reward, Eugenie. According to the survey results, reward is rated very low in importance and priority. That's for the employers. To be clear, this is a survey. These are results from a survey with employers, not employees. Is that a big surprise for you?
Well, as you can see, effectively, that reward is almost at the opposite of the importance and priority payroll gets. And now this is what we see in reality is what happens when we look at the reward mechanisms that are used by companies. Most companies, almost 3/3, still use fixed salary. Then you have about 1/3 and maybe 1/3 that use a variable salary in combination with fixed or with benefits. Benefits is a bit less than 20%, but only 7% uses flexible reward as a mechanism to pay their people. And this is, we find this stable across countries as well.
With flexible rewards, to be clear, you mean that people have the choice a bit to compose the package of the salary themselves?
Exactly, yes. So, and to answer your question, yes, this is kind of surprising because when you give your employees flexible reward, you give them the choice to choose a part of their package according to their personal needs, to individual be more flexible and create a more personal relationship with your employee. And all this is empowering your employee and directly linked to employee experience, which in turn is rated high in priority and high in importance, as we have seen before. So yes, it is surprising to answer your question. And the last thing I would like to say about flexible reward is, if you choose as a company to do this, only 7% is doing it at the time. So there's a big field for you to work on your company brand and to be considered innovative.
Yeah, so it's the right thing to do to work on your employer branding, actually, and to attract the right talent.
And to keep them.
Yeah, also, yeah, of course, retention is important as well. Els, I already referred to the fact that the survey was from employers. We have done other surveys as well with employees. I guess that there the results in terms of how important reward is, that the results are totally different there.
Yeah, indeed. And here on the screen, on this slide, you see basically the ranking going from the highest to the lowest items or concerns for the European employees or workforce. And there, on the highest side, the list of the highest concerns, pay package, is the most important item. So financial well-being is a major concern. I think most of us or employee as well. So you have basically a little bit two hats on in multiple or in many occasions. So it's also kind of a no-brainer. It's normal, I think, that it's an hygiene factor. So it's also not only normal that this is in order and that you have the right pay package and the right reward package. But if you do remember one of the previous slides, it's not ranked very high on the concerns of the priorities of the employers. So that's also a very interesting finding, where as an employer, you should take into consideration because if that is not in order. You put at risk somehow a certain level of stability because people not having the right pay package or having questions or feeling insecure with regards to that whole item, you have a risk of retention, an element that just popped up, and you don't want to leave to see your employee leaving the company just for that, and. Also, when you look at the items, so number one, pay package, but as well job content, recognition, job security, certainly 3 and 4, recognition and job security, has also a very strong link with the pay package and the concern and the importance of pay package. So yes, Peter, it's very important to really balance that well and to take the right actions to make sure that also those concerns are met.
Yeah. Okay, so paying the right attention on the salary is important, but apparently, Eugenie, lots of employees actually don't have a clue about the total salary package of their own. They see what is paid every month, but for the rest, they actually have no clue about the total package. So I guess communication is very important for employers as well about the salary.
Yeah. Yes, indeed, Peter. Communication is key, and as is with many matters, of course. About 80% of the employees, underestimate their salary package, as you rightly said, and not just by a tiny bit, but by a third. So that's a lot of money, and it's quite understandable. As an employee, what you say, you can see your salary on the salary pay slip. Mm-hmm. But how do you value your car? How do you value your pension plan? Even more difficult. And so we find that communication is very important, and companies that do communicate around a reward, you can see immediate effects. And you can see that on the slide on motivation, productivity, on engagement, on retention. And what we see when working with clients, what we observe is that if you work around communication on reward, that the perceived transparency and trust in top management increases almost immediately. Mm-hmm. And to give you an example, we work with a Belgian bank. Now, this bank, a large bank, this bank decided a few years ago to change their reward policy. So a considerable part of their pay package is now paid in units and no longer in euros. Now, the thing is that 1 unit is not necessarily equal to €1. It depends on the choices you make. And so the employees didn't understand anymore what they were earning. They were completely at a loss. And so what we did is we worked with this bank to make an employee benefit statement. And it was beautiful, really, to see what happened next when we launched it in 2019. Shortly after, the bank conducted a satisfaction survey, and 4 out of 5 of the respondents rated, 90% more. 90% of the respondents rated 4 or 5 out of 5. Mm-hmm. But maybe even more important is the many messages that HR received from enthusiastic employees. Congratulations from top management. Now tell me, how often does that happen to HR? Really. So, to wrap this up, I think communication, if you see what it does, how it does motivate your people, productivity, trust, transparency, at least take a look at it as a company.
Yeah, okay. because it's indeed one of the priorities of the employees, and we see that employers are not paying enough attention to it. Right, Els, maybe you can summarize some key takeaways for our customers.
I'll give it a try, Peter. Again, referring to payroll, and one of the first graphs, I think, conclusion is that this is still seen, so smooth and efficient payroll is still seen as a key priority number one. On the other hand, the data that we collected on reward also shows that we can do a better job when it comes to using that as a tool to really enforce and boost the more human-oriented topics in the data. And to the point of Eugenie, communication is really key. Preparation, long time in advance, or at least some time in advance, a good implementation plan, and so clear communication around is really key. It's a no-brainer almost. It just needs to be prepared, and the efforts versus what you get back, the return on investment is really great. So that's, I think, the wrap-up, Eugenie, of what we find in the data.
Okay, thank you, Els. Thank you, Eugenie, for having come to the studio. Safe trip back
Thank you
home.
very much. Thank you.
Right, now we would like to talk about core HR. And for this topic, we've asked our colleague Hans Janssen to share his expertise with us. Due to Corona, we had to limit the number of people here in our studio. So that's the reason why we asked Hans to record a video. Let's have a look.
Good morning. In the previous section, we have talked about your priority in having smooth running payrolls in the various countries where you have. That's an absolutely need, of course. However, in this section, I want to extend this to a second element that I believe is extremely important to create a solid foundation for your HR organization. It is about the multi-country core HR. Over the last decade, the role of HR has become increasingly important. Companies see more and more that people are making the real difference in the marketplace. This means that those companies that are able to attract, develop and retain the right people will be winning. This happens also in the context of changing business models. Hence, there is a shortage of enough qualified people. It has therefore turned into a real concern in the boardrooms. And this is exactly why HR is asked to stand up and move HR into a much more strategic direction. But in order to make that move, it is critical for any company to make sure the foundation of your HR and payroll administration is correct and as efficient as possible. Only when fielding correctly, HR can create the bandwidth to move its functions to the more tactical and strategic HR. In this section, I will talk about three main reasons for having a good core HR in place. While this is of course valid for any company, I believe that the multi-country organization has some specific challenges in this area. The three aspects we will cover are, first of all, digitalization in a uniform way across countries for efficiency and cost effectiveness. Secondly, the core HR as an answer to the demand of employees and managers of these days to control their own HR. And last, but certainly not least, the multi-country core HR as the basis for your insights and your analytics of the workforce. Let's start with the digitalization. No need to say that in these times of COVID, having a fully cloud-based digital system has shown to be elementary. Yet, I've seen many international companies that still have very fragmented systems with hardly any efficient consolidation of data. That is time-consuming, far from efficient, not cost-effective, and in principle an absolutely unnecessary situation. In fact, I would argue that if companies are still spending so much time on this fundamental piece of their HR organization, they will never get to the level of strategic HR. It remains in that case all hands on deck to get the administrative part under control. Where payroll clearly covers the local needs of the country, the core HR is there to create a link between your local needs and your global needs. Having fully digitalized data inputs across your countries in a uniform approach is the absolute basis to create a single source of truth where all your other HR processes can build upon. The second reason for setting up your core HR in a proper, uniform and multi-country way is that the current workforce has different demands on how you do HR. Most people are used to do more and more tasks themselves via apps on their smartphone. To book a trip, for example, you do not go to a travel agency anymore. You book it online. Also for HR, employees and managers do not want to be entirely dependent of an HR team for having access to data, send updates and trigger processes. They request that their employers thus give them the tools to do so. In addition to that, studies have been made in this domain and also show a clear cost optimization when HR processes are more and more brought to the managers and the employees. This requires, however, a shared core HR system across your countries to secure uniformity and efficiency. Imagine that an employee works in different countries and for each situation needs a different self-service app. It will not be understood nor accepted. Hence the importance again of that core HR basis as a basis also for your ESS and MSS processes. Last but not least, having a uniform multi-country core HR, integrated of course with your local payrolls, gives you the basis for consolidated reporting. When I said that HR is entering more and more the boardrooms, it was not just to sit there and listen. There is a clear demand from the board, a huge need for data on the workforce, to answer questions on cost per country, on impact of moving offices to other locations, turnover of the population, inside and external and internal people, and many other basic tasks. Today, without a multi-country core HR across your countries, it takes ages of manual work to create these reports. And we see that a lot of practice, consolidation in Excel, etc. The core HR will give you those answers instantly in reports and dashboards with analytical options. So not having this will never allow you to support decision making at board level with key HR figures. Any other HR process like talent management, learning and development, etc. will always build on top of this solid foundation. So I will summarize. Besides having your local payrolls well in place as a foundation of your payroll administration, implementing also a core HR across your countries in a uniform way is just an essential part of creating that solid basis for running also later on your tactical and strategic HR processes and in supporting the decision making of your company's board. If you're not yet there, it's your time to move. Thank you very much.
I'm definitely remember this new slogan, no core, no glory. Thank you, Hans, for your insights in core HR and how business can thrive by investing in this. So, what do you think, dear customers? Shall we have a break? Let's meet again in 5 minutes. Grab that coffee. On the screen you will see a countdown clock just before we start again so that you don't have to miss the start of our second part. Enjoy the break. See you soon. Bye. Welcome back, everybody. Very glad that you are joining for the second part of our Customer Summit. We've already focused on employee experience with Michael. We talked about payroll and reward with Els and Eugenie, whereas Hans elaborated on multi-country core HR. Now it's the perfect time to discuss how we can enhance our workforce. And for this topic, we invited Ellen Baarslag from ProTime. Welcome to the studio, Ellen.
Thank you, Peter. Nice to be here.
You work at ProTime, and ProTime is part of the SD Worx family. What's your role at ProTime?
Well, I'm a business partner manager by ProTime, and I work for the international team. And you can think of me as the linking pin between ProTime and our SD Worx colleagues in the different countries. So I support them on anything, with whether it's joining them with a meeting at the customer or any questions they have which are ProTime related.
Okay, before we dive into the topic of workforce management, let's first watch another customer testimonial and hear what Worldline says about workforce management.
Worldline is a payment processing company organization. So we provide payment machines that you see in the shops. So when you use your card, that's where you put your PIN or you do your touch and pay. But we do the end-to-end processing of it. I am a senior project manager within HR services. It's a global service department within Worldline. It's newly founded in the last year or so. And our remit, and my remit specifically, is to work with ProTime and look at implementation of workforce management, of time and attendance solutions within the group. Worldline has grown through mergers and acquisitions, which means that our infrastructure and our systems are scattered. We are using up to 25 different systems just within Europe for time and attendance. So one of the things I'm doing is trying to find some synergies around that. ProTime was initially implemented in 2019 for our Belgium section. And they've been very happy with that, and we were looking for a solution to be implemented into wider areas. Since November, we've implemented ProTime into Spain and the UK, and we are currently in progress with implementation in Germany, which is one of our more complex countries. It's proven to be very flexible as a tool. And our users like it a lot. I think ProTime have proven to be good listeners, and the consultants have documented and understood our requirements really well and work around our resource challenges at times. One of the challenges that we've faced at Worldline in the past, let's say 6 months with COVID-19 has been reporting of attendance and absence. Like I mentioned earlier, we have over 20 systems in use at the moment, and the data needs to be displayed in one report. So this obviously takes a lot of time and effort. As a result, we are trying to harmonize our reporting. But to do that, we need a single source for data. That obviously is not done overnight. So the challenge for us is to try and figure out how we can do this in the best way.
Apparently there were some technical issues with Ellen's microphone. So Ellen, maybe start introducing yourself again.
Yeah, so I said I'm part of the international team of ProTime, and my role is business partner manager. So you can think of me as the linking pin of my ProTime business and the SD Worx colleagues in the different countries. So I assist them during maybe a meeting at a customer for a demo or any other questions that are ProTime related.
Okay, we just saw the video from Worldline and the synergy between Worldline and ProTime. Let me ask you the $1 million question. How can you enhance your workforce?
Yeah, well, it's an interesting question. I think you could generally ask, how can you enhance? If you want to improve on certain levels, you have to understand your situation today. You need to know, where am I? How am I doing on certain levels? Like the athlete, for example, if she wants to run a better race, she has to understand on which component of the race she actually can improve. So she needs statistics, she needs data to understand, am I going to have a better start? Do I need a better finish? Do I need to focus on my physical strength? And all those things make that they can zoom in on the different components and on whole then enhance her race in her case. And that's the same in workforce. If you want to improve your workforce, you have to understand, what are the statistics today? Where am I, and how could I get more insight in all those different components, and that leads to a better result over the whole of the workforce.
So these data are really crucial, and that's there then, that workforce management can help as well?
Yes, indeed. So workforce makes it possible to look at data in a different way. So if you look to workforce, your biggest cost probably in a company, or at least in the top 5, I would say, is the workforce, is the labor cost. So if you're looking to your budget that you spend on a year-to-year basis on workforce cost, I think a lot of customers can ask themselves the questions, do we really know what we do with it? Do we know how we spend it in an efficient way? And that's where workforce management can really support you, because the budget of the costs actually represents a big bucket of time. And it represents employees, and those employees have time to spend for you, for your company to work. And that's fact is that time is an ideal part that you can measure really well. It's data that is uniform everywhere. An hour is an hour. It's not under influence of cultural differences or currencies or even interpretable. 60 minutes everywhere. You cannot change it. And well, if you keep track of that measure, of that data, you really get valuable data. What the Worldline case shows that, and I think they're not the only one, a lot of companies still keep track in a rather manual way. Worldline does it in 20 different systems, which makes that you don't really have a single source where you can get your data from. But I think there are still a lot of companies out there that relying on Excel or even a paper-based system to keep track of that data. And obviously, if you do things manually, you're losing data. It's not as accurate as it could be. You might have different interpretations of the people who are filling data. And that results in rather unreliable data. And that's where workforce management can actually do the job for you. It can measure all that data without any manual work. So it will take away the manual process that you might have and give the company real-time, uniform and detailed statistics to be able to zoom in on the different components of your workforce, just like that athlete who zooms in on different components of her race. The company can zoom in on the different components of the company, of the workforce. And that will give them the opportunity also to improve on certain levels and as a whole be able to make the best out of the workforce that you have. And for that, you need reliable and real-time data.
I can imagine, indeed, these data insights are quite complex and even more complex for companies operating in an international environment. Is that true?
Yes, absolutely. You see, well, I think it's, again, the Worldline case shows it as well. They kept the measurement of their hours, they kept it in 20 different systems. So to have an overall overview on your data, you do need, well, actually one single point of truth, one would say. And that's one of the things that I think ProTime is really, really strong at. It's one of our USPs that we can actually offer one single workforce management solution, but able to adapt that to local requirements, local legislation. Every country needs to work in a different way. I think all international companies will recognize that countries to country, they work in a very different way. But the need to have that global overview of your workforce is still there. And that's where Proton can really support our customers with that global system that actually is one system, and will give them the data that they're looking for on a level that have the details that they need. And that means that you cannot just compare data from department to department, but that you can actually compare data across the borders. And that will give you the possibility to zoom in and say, okay, why is this country one doing it different than country two? And can we learn from one another? Can we see, this is what they do really, really well, and let's do that on the other side as well, and in that way enhancing the complete workforce.
Okay, so these data insights give you the possibility to control your costs, for instance. Do you see other benefits of workforce management?
Yeah, you very typically say control, and I think workforce management maybe has that little bit of an image that it's controlling data. But actually the fact that you have that data also offers a lot of transparency, and not just on a centralized level, but throughout the whole company. So it's not just the board who have their KPIs and maybe the dashboards that they're looking for. No, the manager also has a better overview of the data, and maybe even more important, the employee has transparency. The employee can see everything that has involving his data. So whether it's his absences or his additional worked hours or any other data that's based on his time, he can actually have a view on it. And because he has that view, he can also be a little bit more in control. So let's say I worked late yesterday and I have overtime. Now, I can see that and maybe also think, I'd rather have that overtime paid than I normally do because I have flexi time. But this time I would rather have it paid. And I can proactively notify my manager, those hours I worked yesterday additionally, please let them be paid out. And he can do that digital, of course, and have an insight in what happens to it. And because of that, he also, we have that, because we're part of the SD Worx group, we have a high level of integration with the SD Worx payroll engine. So he's also assured, once that overtime is granted, it is also on his next payslip. So he can actually compare what he's getting paid to whatever was registered for him on a time level. So that transparency is something that might not be on the top of the mind when you choose workforce management in general, but I do experience that a lot of customers really, really appreciate, and a lot of employees appreciate the fact that they have an insight in their own data.
Okay, really interesting. Thank you, Ellen, for this clear explanation. Say hello to our colleagues at ProTime and safe journey back.
Thank you very much.
Last but not least, we would like to take the time to focus on talent management. Talent management is all about getting the right talent on board and helping them to grow to their optimal capabilities, while keeping organizational objectives in mind, of course, as well. Nowadays, this has never been more important. First of all, we would like to let one of our customers talk about their view on talent management and its importance. Let's watch the video of Cofidis.
Mon rêve de talent manager, c'est d'avoir un logiciel, une solution digitale qui propose, qui regroupe toutes les solutions que plusieurs outils peuvent offrir en un seul outil. C'est effectivement de pouvoir travailler sur l'intégration des collaborateurs, sur leur carrière, sur l'évaluation, sur la sortie du collaborateur. Je suis Xavier Delcoigne. Au sein de Cofidis, je fais du talent management principalement, c'est-à-dire que je m'occupe de tout ce qui est mobilité interne, développement des carrières, développement des talents. J'accompagne les managers, il y a du coaching interne, donc un rôle très varié, très large. Cofidis, c'est une société qui développe des solutions de financement, des solutions de crédit à la consommation pour ses clients, également toute une gamme de produits d'assurance. Nous sommes implémentés dans 9 pays européens, dont la France, qui est la maison mère et dont tout est parti il y a déjà plusieurs dizaines d'années maintenant, l'Espagne, le Portugal, l'Italie, quelques pays de l'Est, et comporte au total environ 5300 collaborateurs. La relation entre SD Worx et Cofidis existe déjà depuis quelques années puisque SD Worx nous accompagne sur la partie paye principalement. Et puis là, nous sommes en train de développer toute une partie rémunération flexible, le plan cafétéria, qui mobilise vraiment beaucoup de monde ici en interne pour développer ce nouveau gros projet. De mon point de vue sur la partie talent management, par contre, je n'ai pas encore vraiment beaucoup de relations avec SD Worx. Peut-être dans le futur ça pourra se concrétiser. Aujourd'hui, la gestion des talents chez Cofidis, elle se fait de manière un peu artisanale. On est une société qui était au départ assez modeste et qui a grandi très vite. Et donc, pour le moment, c'est encore du fichier Excel, c'est encore du document Word et quelques dossiers et sous-dossiers. Donc, un peu artisanal à aujourd'hui. Demain, on ambitionne de digitaliser davantage, effectivement, le talent management. Digitaliser le talent management, c'est super important parce que ça va contribuer à l'expérience collaborateur, une expérience positive pour nos collaborateurs et aussi pour les employés au niveau RH. Une grande tendance des RH d'aujourd'hui et de demain, c'est la responsabilisation du collaborateur. C'est de l'amener à être davantage autonome et responsable de sa carrière. Et donc, proposer un outil qui soit à la fois accessible par les RH mais aussi par le collaborateur, qu'il puisse lui-même le piloter, le mettre à jour, c'est pour moi essentiel et primordial pour aujourd'hui et pour demain. Un logiciel de talent management, pour moi, il doit être simple d'utilisation tant pour les RH que pour les collaborateurs. Il doit être ergonome et il doit s'adapter à la culture de l'entreprise. Il doit utiliser la même terminologie, par exemple, qui est usitée au sein de l'entreprise. Nos projets, nos grands défis pour demain, c'est évidemment de travailler sur l'employabilité de nos collaborateurs parce que c'est un thème majeur où les carrières ne sont plus linéaires. Un collaborateur peut rentrer dans une fonction et 2 ans plus tard, avec l'évolution de nos métiers, on va avoir besoin d'autres compétences et donc on va devoir travailler vraiment sur cette employabilité. On va devoir travailler aussi sur la rétention. On est déjà occupé d'ailleurs sur la rétention de nos talents puisque le marché maintenant offre plusieurs possibilités. Et donc nos collaborateurs peuvent rentrer chez nous et puis après quelques années avoir fait le tour de leur fonction et peut-être avoir l'envie de partir. On doit travailler sur la rétention de nos talents également. Ce qui est important pour moi dans la relation avec un partenaire comme SD Worx, c'est la proximité. C'est d'avoir un interlocuteur privilégié que je connaisse personnellement. C'est la chaleur dans la relation. C'est de pouvoir le contacter à n'importe quel moment du projet et de le rencontrer physiquement, d'avoir un vrai contact et de vrais échanges aussi d'humain à humain. Certes, l'implémentation d'un logiciel ou du développement technique, c'est important, mais la relation, c'est ce qui pour moi est primordial.
Oh, I really like that video. It's so great to see that Cofidis has these ambitions when it comes to talent management. They are keen on digitalizing this part of their HR spectrum, and we believe that's the right thing to do. Why? This is something that we will hear from Jean-Baptiste de Charette, located in Paris. Let's watch his video.
Hello everybody, happy to connect with all of you and to share some insights from this study from SD Worx on the future of work. Unfortunately, as you can see, I cannot attend with you, so I'm speaking here from the new Paris office, as you can see. I'm Jean-Baptiste de Charette. I've been working in the HR space for 20 years to support all kind of transformation in that space. As a consultant, but also as a transformation leader, and finally as an entrepreneur. So let's focus now on the talent management and question ourselves how it's been challenged in the recent years. We all heard about the digital transformation anytime, anywhere. but also in the recent months with this COVID crisis and so many disruptions about the work and the way we are doing our jobs, mainly remotely right now. So let's take a time machine and try to imagine what it can be in the future and deep dive into 3 different questions. The first one could be, who are the talents right now, but how are they going to become in the future, in the near future, tomorrow? What are their expectations? What is new, or what's the difference between us and what we used to be? Second question is, okay, what is a change for companies from a job perspective, from a skills perspective, and also from a leadership perspective? And finally, the third question is, what to do, how to reset the talent management into a people experience that is providing a kind of compelling experience for our talents and also meets the business needs. So we used in the past to talk about the talent war, a strange wording, but let's question this and ask ourselves, who are the warriors today? Where is the battlefield? But also, what should be the tactical move for us? So the first question is, who are the talents today? So, well, let's be honest, the talent today are not really warriors. They're social, connected activists more than warriors. It's obvious to say, whatever the definition is, that the new generation does not look like the previous one. But considering that, let's get close to more facts. By 2025, Gen Y and D will be the most important one into the companies. That's a huge impact. The way they interact, the work also, the way they do the work is completely different, more social, more digital, more engaged in the society, whatever you might think. Their use of the digital tools, their expectation, their will of what is a job or what should be a company have completely shifted from the previous generation. We can ignore that reality and find it's naive or it's a gadget, but nevertheless, it has a huge impact on the way we, as companies, are interacting or will interact with them as employees. So after talking about the warriors, let's talk about the battlefield now. So what is the battlefield for talent management right now and what it will become in the future? Once again, it's obvious to say that companies have changed and job environment is not the same. But deep diving into this, digital disruption is almost everywhere, you know that, and we forecast that 75% of jobs will disappear or change because of digital by 2030. There's also a background revolution. We are maybe talking a little bit less about that, about the way jobs and organizations are driven today. We've came into the era of the gig economy, slashers, multitasking. It's the same also regarding the organizations that are edge-centric in terms of managing transversal projects. And it's not only because the work is done that way, because it's more productive or bringing more revenues. It's also because most of employees like the way to work like this. And think about the assessment also. We used to be assessed to better know what we know, what we're able to do right now, and just define kind of learnings in order to raise the steps step by step into a hierarchical organization. Today, the assessment have really changed in the way we try to develop people, and we are more trying to define how much we are able to learn and how much we are able to adapt to agile organization. Same thing for leadership. If you look at it, we are moving from, let's say, a commander leadership way, the guy who know and who explain what to do just now to their team, to soft skill rising, another type of leadership which is more a servant leadership way, where leaders are expected to empower their own teams in order for them to be agile and organize the task. So what should be the tactics? Well, if we consider what we just said about the talent management and the way the job is organized, and we compare that to the way we do talent management right now, it's obvious to hear in that study why I can get no satisfaction as an employee from the talent management policies. Think about it. We are driving all this talent management from a job-oriented organization where we consider the 3 pillars are attract, develop, and retain in a one-size-fits-all global policy for all my people. And it's more let's say, helping people with very specific tools like learning to bridge the gap each year from a learning perspective plan on a 1-year plan to develop myself and bring another step in the climb of the organization chart. Now, it's clear that we need a reset, and the attract, develop and retain is not accurate anymore. We should more think talent management, let's say, or people management in another way as access to talent, empower the people and engage the people, and managing everybody as a workforce of one. And the individualized way is really key nowadays. If we deep dive into these 3 pillars of what could be talent management tomorrow, let's focus on the access first pillar. Access means that a company today is not anymore fixed boundaries of long-term employment contracts that used to be in the past, with a clear definition about the employees and the subcontractors. Now, today, we need to tap into the extended workforce, because that's the way we organize the job, with subcontractors, offshoring, outsourcers, and so on, but everybody's contributing to both growth and profitability. So we are not anymore a company with fixed boundaries, and that has a huge impact also from an HRIS, let's say, or core HR perspective, where we should be able to know any kind of people contributing to the workforce, whatever the status is, and that means that we need to better know all the workforce in one integrated system of record, getting all this information, both from a skills perspective, from an individual perspective, in one place. Second pillar about that talent management strategy in the future, let's say, is empower. Empower means that to sustain performance, development should be done in the flow of work. Training, but also information, peer-to-peer, collaboration, etc., should be accessible every time, anywhere, at any time, and that's key to drive a sustainable performance. That's a social learning organization we should all go to in the near future, and some of us have already, let's say, jump-starting that transformation. And finally, the third pillar is engage, and that means that we should consider our people as our first asset, of course, but also go, let's say, to the final conclusion of what does that mean. And that means that we should offer them the same compelling experience we already offer or try to offer to our clients. That means a high level of interactions, individualized interactions. Getting a digital assistant, chatbot, social platforms is a part of it, but that also means managing individualized flexibility for the working environment, for tool sets, or even for benefits or plans is a key lever for an employee to feel that individualized way of interacting with my company. That might be maybe the conclusion. Talent management is not anymore this one-size-fits-all global policy, but it's managing a workforce of one to provide a compelling employee experience. That's a huge challenge, but that's the way we are going to be able to drive this sustainable performance. Well, that's the end of this short keynote. Once again, I hope you enjoyed that discussion. I would prefer to be with you in Belgium, but I'm quite sure we'll have a lot of opportunities in the near future to discuss that. And I wish you a happy, let's say, end of the Worx event.
Hi Michael, you're back in the studio so that we can summarize today's topics together. One thing that's clear is that COVID-19 made us rethink our priorities, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. So I think COVID really is a wake-up call to many things, including the HR strategy and the way we engage with employees. And that's really what I wanted to do, is also have a quick look back at the results of our survey that we did over the course of July with 3,000 HR leaders across Europe, and just to reminisce some of the conclusions that we had there. Obviously, 3,000 HR leaders think along with us and really see this impact as long-lasting. Fixing the basics for this year, next year will remain key, but also assessing digital maturity against the digital opportunity will be a key point of friction and dialogue in many companies. What do we need to digitize? What can we digitize? What is a necessity? One thing, or one thought that I just want to insert there is many people think about digital in contrast to human interaction. Whereas in many cases, it's actually sort of a blend of the two, where some transactional stuff is being done through digital means. Why? Because it's simply more effective and rapid and swift. Whereas the real conversation, the human interaction, the in-depth performance review still has its place within that digital landscape. So I think we should stop thinking about digital versus human as a black and white or as a contrasting thing, but more as a complementary, as a blend of two different ways of doing things. And making the right choice for which channel you use, for which transaction, or for which type of dialogue will be a key thing for HR leaders to consider when they orchestrate their HR technology and their HR process landscape. Some final findings we had there: the stability versus fluidity, the capability to adapt to new circumstances, this idea of risk, which will remain prevalent for years to come. Is there going to be a next COVID? Is there going to be a next pandemic? Are we going to be prepared? How is our landscape adapted or adapting to those circumstances? I think people will remain and keep that as in the back of their minds. Let's have a look at one of the final conclusions of our research here, where we really sort of think about this crisis as an opportunity. I know it's not always easy to flip the thinking and really look at the flip side, but again, I said it in the introduction, I'm a naive optimist, so let's keep that perspective. So when we ask the question, do you plan to have projects to facilitate an optimal employee experience, we saw that over half of the respondents actually have projects in place today, so about a third, and another 20% have it planned for the next 12 months. So this confirms that today digital HR is really at the heart of very many companies, that they're ready to start investing and rolling out digital transactions. I can only see this accelerate. On the right hand of the slide, you see an example of such a digital project that we're actually in the middle of rolling out, and that is changing the perspective on an employee payslip, where typically we saw a payslip as being a print metaphor, a black and white A4 or letter formatted document. And we believe that in the future, if you want to put it into a digital context, you can actually visualize this in an entirely different way. That's the opportunity of digital. When reflecting on that question, I think it's time for our second poll and also see what the digital HR priority is of our audience today.
Okay, then let's say that the votes are open for our second poll. So again, you can click on the button on your screen and we will immediately see the results. Very curious for your answers. So the question is, which process will be your priority in the next 2 years in terms of digital HR? That's the question.
And then we've listed all the various HR processes and types of technologies. There's maybe a couple of that we've left out, such as document management, but I think the majority of the big HR processes are among the choices here. We see payroll and reward as being a big winner at this point, but also core HR, and that's definitely not a foreign concept or a foreign thought. Core HR is something that we definitely see in the market as being a key mover.
It's taking the lead.
Maybe I should not overly promote it.
Yeah, that's the impact of what you're saying, Michael. Okay. But it's promising if you look at the figures that indeed companies do consider that they and they do understand that digitalization is important, and then they have these plans. It's now just a way of indeed going to action.
Yeah, I think this result is pretty much in line with some of the findings of the survey, right? Core HR and payroll are very much around getting the basics right, getting to the right information at the right time. In case another crisis or another urgency would hit, that you're well prepared to deal with the urgency, that you have the data at hand to deal with the crisis.
Yep. Okay, so let's go to the summary then.
I think a key point that I just wanted to reiterate on, coming from Kobe's perspective and his strategy update, is really this idea about employee life cycle. SD Worx for a long time has been very focused on payroll and reward, and that remains at the heart of our business. It is the beating heart of our business. Every month payroll is coming back, and we thrive on that rhythm. But around that, we see that many organizations are really looking at all the different touch points impacting the employee experience. And these touch points are wrapped in staffing and recruitment, in core HR and the transactional HR part, including document management, including travel and expense management, including workforce management and then talent. And so we're in the middle of building out all of these domains and ensuring that we have the right technology, the right outsourcing options, the right expertise and consulting skills, and the right data points and benchmarks across that whole employee life cycle. And that remains a critical thought in terms of working with SD Worx going forward and into the future, that over time you'll be able to work with an integrated people suite of various applications in the life cycle.
Okay. Many thanks, Michael, for this clear and transparent wrap-up. I think we've come to the end of the Worx. I really hope that you enjoyed our first virtual customer summit. And I would like to thank our speakers of today. That's Kobe, Michael, Els, Eugenie, Hans, Ellen, and Jean-Baptiste. But of course, above all, I want to thank you, our customers, for your interest and for having joined this virtual summit. I really would like to thank you as well for the nice collaboration. And I wish you and your employees every success so you and your people can thrive. That's our promise. We will share the recordings of this summit with you soon, and we really hope to see you again next year, and let's hope that will be in real life. Stay safe, take care, bye-bye.